Even with the lack of availability of these reports since the year 2000, it is my belief that we are in a third phase of these farm attacks. It must now be noted that the members of APLA and MK who originally made these attacks can no longer fit the profile. These people will be in their late 30s and early 40s. As a trend, these attacks are part of a continuum, and from Wilman's evidence, it may be seen that these early attacks provided a culture for what has continued to this day, carried over to another generation. Though both generations share a similar profile, politically speaking, they come from two completely different climates. It is my opinion that these farm attacks are becoming a form of culture. They are becoming a form of self-expression for disaffected black men. Fundamentally, I see a failing in government. I see a failing in government in the following areas. With no real police force, either farmers, private security companies, or the commando groups must become the law themselves, and these people are just simply not trained to effectuate that, and probably would admit that themselves. Secondly, I believe the government have been too focused on developing urban areas, neglecting rural areas in the process. They have completely failed to develop them economically or logistically. They haven't provided enough schools. They have not provided enough opportunities in these areas. Crime may become one of the few alternatives for the people who live in the area. Thirdly, there is the issue of reconciliation. One of the reports did cite that when the government changed from Nelson Mandela to Thabo Mbeki, the entire culture of government changed. Mbeki changed the focus of government from reconciliation to economic development, and many people felt it just simply didn't address the issues of the old South Africa. The entire situation becomes increasingly complex. An attempt to resolve the entire land distribution issue will result in another problem. Due to the nature of modern agriculture, it is natural that large tracts of land are actually owned by a small quantity of people. Thus, if the land is actually redistributed, it'll only empower a tiny quantity of people, or it'll become commercially unsuccessful, broken into smaller pieces. For lack of a better term, I'm going to provide some editorial comments on the back of this video. Far from providing clarity, I think that these reports provide more confusion than anything. Within them, there are a good deal of rival conclusions. What I do find very interesting is the government's line. They're very quick to allocate blame instead of actually trying to understand the nature of conflict in these rural areas. They look purely at the heavy-handedness of the farmers. They don't even consider that maybe the failure to provide good policing in these areas might have actually contributed to part of the problem, contributed to the fact that farmers feel under threat and may actually react with excessive brutality to many of the people who are resident in this area. And maybe this has actually also contributed to causing distrust between various racial groups. In this way, I feel they've actually been very selective about choosing to actually blame the farmers for the entire crisis. I've noticed that in the same way they're very quick to play the race card, but also very slow to admit that according to some of these researchers, some of their own radical policies in the anti-apartheid era might have actually contributed to the situation in the rural areas. These cases, they are a problem, but they're a problem relative to a far bigger issue. With the arrival of the Boeremag and with the potential for Zimbabwe-styled land invasions, this whole issue is starting to look like the fuse on a bomb. I hope the government actually does something quite radical to sort it out. I did not want to actually suggest any solutions because I feel that the whole situation is extremely complex and beyond me. What I would suggest is that the government start looking at providing tax rebates for any firm wanting to actually set up shop in any outlying area. The other problem, naturally, is the police. They'll have to take a radical approach with them. Either they'll have to completely improve the service from the bottom up, or maybe they'll have to go with a different approach. Maybe it might be an idea to actually empower more of the commando units and actually provide assistance for private security companies and get them well regulated in some kind of manner and provide standards. If the government actually does something like land reform, and I'm totally against the idea, I suggest that they seriously consider some kind of compromise. There may be two models that I would suggest for lack of anything else. The first one would be to maybe try and form a medieval land structure in which a tribal authority is actually given the land, and the white farmer, who was a former owner, should be compensated, and from there he'll become a tenant, whereas the tribal authority will hold the freehold. They will become a tenant, paying a symbolic amount to this tribal authority. In this way, this money can actually be used to develop the area. As this money ultimately assists with the development of the area, I actually think that there should be a tax break also for farmers willing to take on this policy. The second suggestion I would have is that I know white farmers would be reluctant to do this, but completely abandon the land. It might be too much of a source of conflict, and one maybe could find a compromise with government. Instead of actually doing the government model in which one invites foreign consortiums to administrate land that is owned by these fledgling black farmers, what might be a better idea is to form South African consortiums in which the old white farmers become managers of these companies which oversee these farming districts. And in actual fact, this will be a good thing because it will contain a lot of the money earned by these consortiums within South Africa. In this way, whites can remain financially empowered, and blacks will be able to get the land they've so long desired. So on that note, I'll close. I've stuck my neck out a bit too far, but I suppose it had to be done.